Hello. Tonight, we begin with the most fascinating fairy tale. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The Snow Daughter and the Fire Son. There was once upon a time a man and his wife, and they had no children, which was a great grief to them. One winter's day, when the sun was shining brightly, the couple were standing outside their cottage, and the woman was looking at all the little icicles which hung from the roof. She sighed, and turning to her husband, said, "I wish I had as many children as there are icicles hanging there." "Nothing would please me more either," replied her husband. Then a tiny icicle detached itself from the roof and dropped into the woman's mouth, who swallowed it with a smile and said, "Perhaps I shall give birth to a snow child now." Her husband laughed at his wife's strange idea, and they went back into the house. But after a short time, the woman gave birth to a little girl who was as white as snow and as cold as ice. If they brought the child anywhere near the fire, it screamed loudly till they put it back into some cool place. The little maid throve wonderfully, and in a few months she could run about and speak. But she was not altogether easy to bring up, and gave her parents much trouble and anxiety. For all summer, she insisted on spending in the cellar, and in the winter, she would sleep outside in the snow. And the colder it was, the happier she seemed to be. Her father and mother called her simply "our Snow Daughter," and this name stuck to her all her life. One day, her parents sat by the fire, talking over the extraordinary behavior of their daughter, who was disporting herself in the snowstorm that raged outside. The woman sighed deeply and said, "I wish I had given birth to a fire son." As she said these words, a spark from the big wood fire flew into the woman's lap, and she said with a laugh, "Now perhaps I shall give birth to a fire son." The man laughed at his wife's words and thought it was a good joke, but he ceased to think it a joke when his wife shortly afterwards gave birth to a boy, who screamed lustily till he was put quite close to the fire, and who nearly yelled himself into a fit if the Snow Daughter came anywhere near him. The Snow Daughter herself avoided him as much as she could, and always crept into a corner as far away from him as possible. The parents called the boy simply "our Fire Son," a name which stuck to him all his life. They had a great deal of trouble and worry with him, too, but he throve and grew very quickly, and before he was a year old, he could run about and talk. He was as red as fire and as hot to touch. And he always sat on the hearth quite close to the fire and complained of the cold. If his sister were in the room, he almost crept into the flames, while the girl on her part always complained of the great heat if her brother were anywhere near. In summer, the boy always lay out in the sun, while the girl hid herself in the cellar. So it happened that the brother and sister came very little into contact with each other. In fact, they carefully avoided it. Just as the girl grew up into a beautiful woman, her father and mother both died, one after the other. Then the fire son, who had grown up in the meantime into a fine, strong young man, said to his sister, "I am going out into the world, for what is the use of remaining on here?" "I shall go with you," she answered, "for except you, I have no one in the world. And I have a feeling that if we set out together, we shall be lucky." The fire son said, "I love you with all my heart, but at the same time, I always freeze if you are near me, and you nearly die of heat if I approach you. How shall we travel about together without being odious the one to the other?" "Don't worry about that," replied the girl, "for I've thought it all over and have settled on a plan which will make us each able to bear with the other. See, I have had a fur cloak made for each of us, and if we put them on, I shall not feel the heat so much, nor you the cold." So they put on the fur cloaks and set out cheerfully on their way, and for the first time in their lives, quite happy in each other's company. For a long time, the fire son and the snow daughter wandered through the world, and when at the beginning of winter they came to a big wood, they determined to stay there till spring. The fire son built himself a hut where he always kept up a huge fire, while his sister, with very few clothes on, stayed outside night and day. Now it happened one day that the king of the land held a hunt in this wood, and saw the snow daughter wandering about in the open air. He wondered very much who the beautiful girl clad in such garments could be, and he stopped and spoke to her. He soon learnt that she could not stand heat, and that her brother could not endure cold. The king was so charmed by the snow daughter that he asked her to be his wife. The girl consented, and the wedding was held with much state. The king had a huge house of ice made for his wife underground, so that even in summer it did not melt. But for his brother-in-law, he had a house built with huge ovens all round it, that were kept heated all day and night. The fire son was delighted, but the perpetual heat in which he lived made his body so hot that it was dangerous to go too close to him. One day, the king gave a great feast, and asked his brother-in-law among the other guests. The Fire Son did not appear till everyone had assembled, and when he did, everyone fled outside to the open air. So intense was the heat he gave forth. Then the king was very angry and said, "If I had known what a lot of trouble you would have been, I would never have taken you into my house." Then the Fire Son replied with a laugh, "Don't be angry, dear brother. I love heat, and my sister loves cold. Come here and let me embrace you, and then I'll go home at once." And before the king had time to reply, the Fire Son seized him in a tight embrace. The king screamed aloud in agony, and when his wife, the Snow Daughter, who had taken refuge from her brother in the next room, hurried to him, the king lay dead on the ground, burnt to a cinder. When the Snow Daughter saw this, she turned on her brother and flew at him. Then a fight began, the like of which had never been seen on earth. When the people, attracted by the noise, hurried to the spot, they saw the Snow Daughter melting into water, and the Fire Son burn to a cinder. And so ended the unhappy brother and sister. The story of King Frost. There was once upon a time a peasant woman who had a daughter and a stepdaughter. The daughter had her own way in everything, and whatever she did was right in her mother's eyes. But the poor stepdaughter had a hard time. Let her do what she would, she was always blamed, and got small thanks for all the trouble she took. Nothing was right, everything wrong. And yet, if the truth were known, the girl was worth her weight in gold. She was so unselfish and good-hearted. But her stepmother did not like her, and the poor girl's days were spent in weeping, for it was impossible to live peacefully with the woman. The wicked shrew was determined to get rid of the girl by fair means or foul, and kept saying to her father, "Send her away, old man. Send her away, anywhere, so that my eyes shan't be plagued any longer by the sight of her, or my ears tormented by the sound of her voice. Send her out into the fields, and let the cutting frost do for her." In vain did the poor old father weep and implore her pity. She was firm, and he dared not gainsay her. So he placed his daughter in a sledge, not even daring to give her a horsecloth to keep herself warm with, and drove her out onto the bare, open fields, where he kissed her and left her, driving home as fast as he could, that he might not witness her miserable death. Deserted by her father, the poor girl sat down under a fir tree at the edge of the forest and began to weep silently. Suddenly, she heard a faint sound. It was King Frost springing from tree to tree and cracking his fingers as he went. At length, he reached the fir tree beneath which she was sitting, and with a crisp, crackling sound, he alighted beside her. and looked at her lovely face. "Well, maiden," he snapped out, "do you know who I am? I am King Frost, King of the Red Noses." "All hail to you, great king," answered the girl in a gentle, trembling voice. "Have you come to take me?" "Are you warm, maiden?" he replied. "Quite warm, King Frost," she answered, though she shivered as she spoke. Then King Frost stooped down and bent over the girl, and the crackling sound grew louder, and the air seemed to be full of knives and darts. And again he asked, "Maiden, are you warm? Are you warm, you beautiful girl?" And though her breath was almost frozen on her lips, she whispered gently, "Quite warm, King Frost." Then King Frost gnashed his teeth and cracked his fingers, and his eyes sparkled, and the crackling, crisp sound was louder than ever. And for the last time he asked her, "Maiden, are you still warm? Are you still warm, little love?" And the poor girl was so stiff and numb that she could just gasp, "Still warm, O king." Now her gentle, courteous words and her uncomplaining ways touched King Frost, and he had pity on her, and he wrapped her up in furs and covered her with blankets, and he fetched a great box in which were beautiful jewels and a rich robe embroidered in gold and silver. And she put it on and looked more lovely than ever. And King Frost stepped with her into his sledge with 6 white horses. In the meantime, the wicked stepmother was waiting at home for news of the girl's death and preparing pancakes for the funeral feast. And she said to her husband, "Old man, you had better go out into the fields and find your daughter's body and bury her." Just as the old man was leaving the house, the little dog under the table began to bark, saying, "Your daughter shall live to be your delight. Her daughter shall die this very night." "Hold your tongue, you foolish beast," scolded the woman. "There's a pancake for you, but you must say, 'Her daughter shall have much silver and gold. His daughter is frozen quite stiff and cold.'" But the doggy ate up the pancake and barked, saying, "His daughter shall wear a crown on her head. Her daughter shall die unwooed, unwed." Then the old woman tried to coax the doggy with more pancakes and to terrify it with blows, but he barked on, always repeating the same words. And suddenly the door creaked and flew open, and a great, heavy chest was pushed in, and behind it came the stepdaughter, radiant and beautiful, in a dress all glittering with silver and gold. For a moment, the stepmother's eyes were dazzled. Then she called to her husband, "Old man, yoke the horses at once into the sledge, and take my daughter to the same field and leave her on the same spot exactly." And so the old man took the girl and left her beneath the same tree where he had parted from his daughter. In a few minutes, King Frost came past, and looking at the girl, he said, "Are you warm, maiden?" "What a blind old fool you must be to ask such a question," she answered angrily. "Can't you see that my hands and feet are nearly frozen?" Then King Frost sprang to and fro in front of her, questioning her, and getting only rude, rough words in reply, till at last he got very angry, and Koopa cracked his fingers and gnashed his teeth and froze her to death. But in the hut, her mother was waiting for her return, and as she grew impatient, she said to her husband, "Get out the horses, old man, to go and fetch her home, but see that you are careful not to upset the sledge and lose the chest." But the doggie beneath the table began to bark, saying, "Your daughter is frozen quite stiff and cold, and shall never have a chest full of gold." "Don't tell such wicked lies," scolded the woman. "There's a cake for you. Now say, 'Her daughter shall marry a mighty king.'" At that moment, the door flew open, and she rushed out to meet her daughter. And as she took her frozen body in her arms, she too was chilled to death. The death of the sun hero. Many, many thousand years ago, there lived a mighty king, whom heaven had blessed with a clever and beautiful son. When he was only 10 years old, the boy was cleverer than all the king's counselors put together, and when he was 20, he was the greatest hero in the whole kingdom. His father could not make enough of his son, and always had him clothed in golden garments, which shone and sparkled like the sun. And his mother gave him a white horse, which never slept, and which flew like the wind. All the people in the land loved him dearly, and called him the Sun Hero, for they did not think his like existed under the sun. Now it happened one night that both his parents had the same extraordinary dream. They dreamt that a girl all dressed in red had come to them and said, "If you wish that your son should really become the Sun Hero indeed, and not only in name, let him go out into the world and search for the tree of the sun. And when he has found it, let him pluck a golden apple from it and bring it home." When the king and queen had each related their dreams to the other, they were much amazed that they should both have dreamt exactly the same about their son. And the king said to his wife, "This is clearly a sign from heaven that we should send our son out into the world in order that he may come home the great Sun Hero, as the red girl said, not only in name, but in deed." The queen consented with many tears, and the king at once bade his son set forth in search of the tree of the sun, from which he was to pluck a golden apple. The prince was delighted at the prospect and set out on his travels that very day. For a long time he wandered all through the world, and it was not till the 99th day after he started that he found an old man who was able to tell him where the tree of the sun grew. He followed his directions and rode on his way, and after another 99 days, he arrived at a golden castle, which stood in the middle of a vast wilderness. He knocked at the door, which was opened noiselessly and by invisible hands. Finding no one about, the prince rode on and came to a great meadow where the sun tree grew. When he reached the tree, he put out his hand to pick a golden apple. But all of a sudden, the tree grew higher, so that he could not reach its fruit. Then he heard someone behind him laughing. Turning round, he saw the girl in red walking towards him, who addressed him in these words: "Do you really imagine, brave son of the earth, that you can pluck an apple so easily from the tree of the sun? Before you can do that, you have a difficult task before you. You must guard the tree for 9 days and 9 nights from the ravages of 2 wild black wolves who will try to harm it. Do you think you can undertake this?" "Yes," answered the sun hero. "I will guard the tree of the sun 9 days and 9 nights." Then the girl continued, "Remember, though, if you do not succeed, the sun will kill you. Now begin your watch." With these words, the red girl went back into the golden castle. She had hardly left him when the 2 black wolves appeared. But the sun hero beat them off with his sword, and they retired, only, however, to reappear in a very short time. The sun hero chased them away once more, but he had hardly sat down to rest when the 2 black wolves were on the scene again. This went on for 7 days and nights, when the white horse, who had never done such a thing before, turned to the sun hero and said in a human voice, "Listen to what I am going to say. A fairy gave me to your mother in order that I might be of service to you. So let me tell you that if you go to sleep and let the wolves harm the tree, the sun will surely kill you." The fairy, foreseeing this, put everyone in the world under a spell which prevents their obeying the sun's command to take your life. But all the same, she has forgotten one person who will certainly kill you if you fall asleep and let the wolves damage the tree. So watch and keep the wolves away. Then the sun hero strove with all his might and kept the black wolves at bay and conquered his desire to sleep. But on the 8th night, his strength failed him, and he fell fast asleep. When he awoke, a woman in black stood beside him, who said, "You have fulfilled your task very badly. for you have let the 2 black wolves damage the tree of the sun. I am the mother of the sun, and I command you to ride away from here at once, and I pronounce sentence of death upon you, for you proudly let yourself be called the Sun Hero without having done anything to deserve the name." The youth mounted his horse sadly and rode home. The people all thronged round him on his return, anxious to hear his adventures, but he told them nothing, and only to his mother did he confide what had befallen him. But the old queen laughed and said to her son, "Don't worry, my child. You see, the fairy has protected you so far, and the sun has found no one to kill you. So cheer up and be happy." After a time, the prince forgot all about his adventure and married a beautiful princess, with whom he lived very happily for some time. But one day, when he was out hunting, he felt very thirsty, and coming to a stream, he stooped down to drink from it, and this caused his death, for a crab came swimming up, and with its claws tore out his tongue. He was carried home in a dying condition, and as he lay on his deathbed, the black woman appeared and said, "So the sun has, after all, found someone who was not under the fairy's spell, who has caused your death. And a similar fate will overtake everyone under the sun who wrongfully assumes a title to which he has no right." The Witch. Once upon a time, there was a peasant whose wife died, leaving him with 2 children, twins, a boy and a girl. For some years, the poor man lived on alone with the children, caring for them as best he could. But everything in the house seemed to go wrong without a woman to look after it. And at last, he made up his mind to marry again, feeling that a wife would bring peace and order to his household and take care of his motherless children. So he married, and in the following years, several children were born to him. But peace and order did not come to the household, for the stepmother was very cruel to the twins, and beat them, and half-starved them, and constantly drove them out of the house, for her one idea was to get them out of the way. All day she thought of nothing but how she should get rid of them, and at last an evil idea came into her head, and she determined to send them out into the great gloomy wood where a wicked witch lived. And so one morning she spoke to them, saying, "You have been such good children that I am going to send you to visit my granny, who lives in a dear little hut in the wood. You will have to wait upon her and serve her, but you will be well rewarded, for she will give you the best of everything." So the children left the house together, and the little sister, who was very wise for her years, said to the brother, "We will first go and see our own dear grandmother, and tell her where our stepmother is sending us." And when the grandmother heard where they were going, she cried and said, "You poor motherless children, how I pity you, and yet I can do nothing to help you. Your stepmother is not sending you to her granny, but to a wicked witch who lives in that great gloomy wood. Now listen to me, children. You must be civil and kind to everyone, and never say a cross word to anyone, and never touch a crumb belonging to anyone else. Who knows if, after all, help may not be sent to you." And she gave her grandchildren a bottle of milk and a piece of ham and a loaf of bread, and they set out for the great, gloomy wood. When they reached it, they saw in front of them, in the thickest of the trees, a queer little hut. And when they looked into it, there lay the witch, with her head on the threshold of the door, with one foot in one corner and the other in the other corner, and her knees cocked up, almost touching the ceiling. "Who's there?" she snarled in an awful voice when she saw the children, and they answered civilly, though they were so terrified that they hid behind one another, and said, "Good morning, Granny. Our stepmother has sent us to wait upon you and serve you." "See that you do it well, then," growled the witch. "If I am pleased with you, I'll reward you. But if I am not, I'll put you in a pan and fry you in the oven. That's what I'll do with you, my pretty dears. You have been gently reared, but you'll find my work hard enough. See if you don't." And so saying, she set the girl down to spin yarn, and she gave the boy a sieve in which to carry water from the well, and she herself went out into the wood. Now, as the girl was sitting at her distaff, weeping bitterly because she could not spin, she heard the sound of hundreds of little feet, and from every hole and corner in the hut, mice came pattering along the floor, squeaking and saying, "Little girl, why are your eyes so red? If you want help, then give us some bread." And the girl gave them the bread that her grandmother had given her. Then the mice told her that the witch had a cat, and the cat was very fond of ham. If she would give the cat her ham, it would show her the way out of the wood, and in the meantime they would spin the yarn for her. So the girl set out to look for the cat. And as she was hunting about, she met her brother, in great trouble because he could not carry water from the well in a sieve, as it came pouring out as fast as he put it in. And as she was trying to comfort him, they heard a rustling of wings, and a flight of wrens alighted on the ground beside them. And the wrens said, "Give us some crumbs, then you need not grieve, for you'll find that water will stay in the sieve." Then the twins, crumbled their bread on the ground, and the wrens pecked it, and chirruped and chirped. And when they had eaten the last crumb, they told the boy to fill up the holes of the sieve with clay, and then to draw water from the well. So he did what they said, and carried the sieve full of water into the hut without spilling a drop. When they entered the hut, the cat was curled up on the floor, so they stroked her and fed her with ham, and said to her, "Pussy, gray pussy, tell us how we are to get away from the witch." Then the cat thanked them for the ham, and gave them a pocket handkerchief and a comb, and told them that when the witch pursued them, as she certainly would, all they had to do was to throw the handkerchief on the ground and run as fast as they could. As soon as the handkerchief touched the ground, a deep, broad river would spring up, which would hinder the witch's progress. If she managed to get across it, they must throw the comb behind them and run for their lives. For where the comb fell, a dense forest would start up, which would delay the witch so long that they would be able to get safely away. The cat had scarcely finished speaking when the witch returned to see if the children had fulfilled their tasks. "Well, you have done well enough for today," she grumbled, "but tomorrow you'll have something more difficult to do. And if you don't do it well, you pampered brats, straight into the oven you go." Half dead with fright and trembling in every limb, the poor children lay down to sleep on a heap of straw in the corner of the hut, but they dared not close their eyes and scarcely ventured to breathe. In the morning, the witch gave the girl 2 pieces of linen to weave before night, and the boy a pile of wood to cut into chips. Then the witch left them to their tasks and went out into the wood. As soon as she had gone out of sight, the children took the comb and the handkerchief, and taking one another by the hand, they started and ran and ran and ran. And first they met the watchdog, who was going to leap on them and tear them to pieces. But they threw the remains of their bread to him, and he ate them and wagged his tail. Then they were hindered by the birch trees, whose branches almost put their eyes out. But the little sister tied the twigs together with a piece of ribbon, and they got past safely, and, after running through the wood, came out onto the open fields. In the meantime, in the hut, the cat was busy weaving the linen and tangling the threads as it wove, and the witch returned to see how the children were getting on, and she crept up to the window and whispered, "Are you weaving, my little dear?" "Yes, Granny, I am weaving," answered the cat. When the witch saw that the children had escaped her, she was furious, and hitting the cat with a porringer, she said, "Why did you let the children leave the hut? Why did you not scratch their eyes out?" But the cat curled up its tail and put its back up, and answered, I have served you all these years, and you never even threw me a bone. But the dear children gave me their own piece of ham. But then the witch was furious with the watchdog and with the birch trees because they had let the children pass. But the dog answered, I have served you all these years, and you never gave me so much as a hard crust. But the dear children gave me their own loaf of bread. And the birch rustled its leaves and said, I have served you longer than I can say, and you never tied a bit of twine even round my branches, and the dear children bound them up with their brightest ribbons. So the witch saw there was no help to be got from her old servants, and that the best thing she could do was to mount on her broom and set off in pursuit of the children. And as the children ran, they heard the sound of the broom sweeping the ground close behind them. So instantly, they threw the handkerchief down over their shoulder, and in a moment, a deep, broad river flowed behind them. When the witch came up to it, it took her a long time before she found a place which she could ford over on her broomstick. But at last she got across and continued the chase faster than before. And as the children ran, they heard a sound, and the little sister put her ear to the ground and heard the broom sweeping the earth close behind them. So, quick as thought, she threw the comb down on the ground, and in an instant, as the cat had said, a dense forest sprung up, in which the roots and branches were so closely intertwined that it was impossible to force a way through it. So when the witch came up to it on her broom, she found that there was nothing for it but to turn round and go back to her hut. But the twins ran straight on till they reached their own home. Then they told their father all that they had suffered, and he was so angry with their stepmother that he drove her out of the house and never let her return. But he and the children lived happily together, and he took care of them himself and never let a stranger come near them. The Hazel-Nut Child. There was once upon a time a couple who had no children, and they prayed heaven every day to send them a child, though it were no bigger than a hazel nut. At last, heaven heard their prayer and sent them a child exactly the size of a hazelnut, and it never grew an inch. The parents were very devoted to the little creature and nursed and tended it carefully. Their tiny son, too, was as clever as he could be, and so sharp and sensible that all the neighbors marveled over the wise things he said and did. When the Hazel-Nut Child was 15 years old and was sitting one day in an eggshell on the table beside his mother, she turned to him and said, "You are now 15 years old, and nothing can be done with you. What do you intend to be?" "A messenger," answered the Hazel-Nut Child. Then his mother burst out laughing and said, What an idea! You a messenger! Why, your little feet would take an hour to go the distance an ordinary person could do in a minute. But the Hazel-Nut Child replied, Nevertheless, I mean to be a messenger. Just send me a message, and you'll see that I shall be back in next to no time. So his mother said, Very well. Go to your aunt in the neighboring village, and fetch me a comb. The Hazel-Nut Child jumped quickly out of the eggshell and ran out into the street. Here he found a man on horseback who was just setting out for the neighboring village. He crept up the horse's leg, sat down under the saddle, and then began to pinch the horse and to prick it with a pin. The horse plunged and reared, and then set off at a hard gallop, which it continued in spite of its rider's efforts to stop it. When they reached the village, the Hazel-Nut Child left off pricking the horse, and the poor, tired creature pursued its way at a snail's pace. The Hazel-Nut Child took advantage of this and crept down the horse's leg. Then he ran to his aunt and asked her for a comb. On the way home, he met another rider and did the return journey in exactly the same way. When he handed his mother the comb that his aunt had given him, she was much amazed and asked him, But how did you manage to get back so quickly? Ah, mother, he replied. You see, I was quite right when I said I knew a messenger was the profession for me. His father, too, possessed a horse which he often used to take out into the fields to graze. One day, he took the Hazel-Nut Child with him. At midday, the father turned to his small son and said, Stay here and look after the horse. I must go home and give your mother a message, but I shall be back soon. When his father had gone, a robber passed by and saw the horse grazing without anyone watching it, for of course he could not see the Hazel-Nut Child hidden in the grass. So he mounted the horse and rode away. But the Hazel-Nut Child, who was the most active little creature, climbed up the horse's tail and began to bite it on the back, enraging the creature to such an extent that it paid no attention to the direction the robber tried to make it go in, but galloped straight home. The father was much astonished when he saw a stranger riding his horse. But the Hazel-Nut Child climbed down quickly and told him all that had happened. And his father had the robber arrested at once and put into prison. One autumn, when the Hazel-Nut Child was 20 years old, he said to his parents, Farewell, my dear father and mother. I am going to set out into the world, and as soon as I have become rich, I will return home to you. The parents laughed at the little man's words, but did not believe him for a moment. In the evening, the Hazel-Nut Child crept onto the roof, where some storks had built their nest. The storks were fast asleep, and he climbed onto the back of the father stork and bound a silk cord round the joint of one of its wings. Then he crept among its soft, downy feathers and fell asleep. The next morning, the storks flew towards the south, for winter was approaching. The Hazel-Nut Child flew through the air on the stork's back, and when he wanted to rest, he bound his silk cord onto the joint of the bird's other wing so that it could not fly any farther. In this way, he reached the country of the black people, where the storks took up their abode close to the capital. When the people saw the Hazel-Nut Child, they were much astonished, and took him with the stork to the king of the country. The king was delighted with the little creature, and kept him always beside him. And he soon grew so fond of the little man that he gave him a diamond 4 times as big as himself. The Hazel-Nut Child fastened the diamond firmly under the stork's neck with a ribbon. And when he saw that the other storks were getting ready for their northern flight, he untied the silk cord from his stork's wings, and away they went, getting nearer home every minute. At length, the Hazel-Nut Child came to his native village. Then he undid the ribbon from the stork's neck, and the diamond fell to the ground. He covered it first with sand and stones, and then ran to get his parents, so that they might carry the treasure home, for he himself was not able to lift the great diamond. So the Hazel-Nut Child and his parents lived in happiness and prosperity after this till they died. The story of Big Klaus and Little Klaus. In a certain village, there lived 2 people who had both the same name. Both were called Klaus, but one owned 4 horses, and the other only 1. In order to distinguish the one from the other, the one who had 4 horses was called Big Klaus, and the one who had only 1 horse, Little Klaus. Now you shall hear what befell them both, for this is a true story. The whole week through, Little Klaus had to plow for Big Klaus and lend him his 1 horse. Then Big Klaus lent him his 4 horses, but only once a week, and that was on Sunday. Hurrah! How loudly Little Klaus cracked his whip over all the 5 horses, for they were indeed as good as his on this one day. The sun shone brightly, and all the bells in the church towers were pealing. The people were dressed in their best clothes and were going to church with their hymn books under their arms to hear the minister preach. They saw Little Klaus plowing with the 5 horses, but he was so happy that he kept on cracking his whip and calling out, "Gee up, my 5 horses!" "You mustn't say that," said Big Klaus. "Only 1 horse is yours." But as soon as someone else was going by, Little Klaus forgot that he must not say it, and called out, "Gee up, my 5 horses!" "Now you had better stop that," said Big Klaus, "for if you say it once more, I will give your horse such a crack on the head that it will drop down dead on the spot." "I really won't say it again," said little Klaus. But as soon as more people passed by and nodded him good morning, he became so happy in thinking how well it looked to have 5 horses plowing his field that, cracking his whip, he called out, "Gee up, my 5 horses!" "I'll see to your horses," said Big Klaus. And seizing an iron bar, he struck little Klaus's one horse such a blow on the head that it fell down and died on the spot. "Alas, now I have no horse," said little Klaus, beginning to cry. Then he flayed the skin off his horse, dried it, and put it in a sack, which he threw over his shoulder, and went into the town to sell it. He had a long way to go, and had to pass through a great dark forest. A dreadful storm came on, in which he lost his way, and before he could get on to the right road, night came on, and it was impossible to reach the town that evening. Right in front of him was a large farmhouse. The window shutters were closed, but the light came through the chinks. "I should very much like to be allowed to spend the night there," thought little Klaus. And he went and knocked at the door. The farmer's wife opened it, but when she heard what he wanted, she told him to go away. Her husband was not at home, and she took in no strangers. "Well, I must lie down outside," said little Klaus, and the farmer's wife shut the door in his face. Close by stood a large haystack, and between it and the house, a little outhouse covered with a flat thatched roof. "I can lie down there," thought little Klaus, looking at the roof. "It will make a splendid bed, if only the stork won't fly down and bite my legs." For a live stork was standing on the roof where it had its nest. So little Klaus crept up into the outhouse where he lay down and made himself comfortable for the night. The wooden shutters over the windows were not shut at the top, and he could just see into the room. There stood a large table, spread with wine and roast meat and a beautiful fish. The farmer's wife and the sexton sat at the table, but there was no one else. She was filling up his glass while he stuck his fork into the fish, which was his favorite dish. If one could only get some of that, thought little Klaus, stretching his head towards the window. Ah, what delicious cakes he saw standing there. It was a feast. Then he heard someone riding along the road towards the house. It was the farmer coming home. He was a very worthy man, but he had one great peculiarity, namely, that he could not bear to see a sexton. If he saw one, he was made quite mad. That was why the sexton had gone to say good day to the farmer's wife when he knew that her husband was not at home, and the good woman therefore put in front of him the best food she had. But when they heard the farmer coming, they were frightened. And the farmer's wife begged the sexton to creep into a great empty chest. He did so, as he knew the poor man could not bear to see a sexton. The wife hastily hid all the beautiful food and the wine in her oven, for if her husband had seen it, he would have been sure to ask what it all meant. "Oh dear, oh dear," groaned little Klaus up in the shed when he saw the good food disappearing. "Is anybody up there?" asked the farmer, catching sight of little Klaus. "Why are you lying there? Come with me into the house." Then little Klaus told him how he had lost his way and begged to be allowed to spend the night there. "Yes, certainly," said the farmer, "but we must first have something to eat." The wife received them both very kindly, spread a long table, and gave them a large plate of porridge. The farmer was hungry and ate with a good appetite, but little Klaus could not help thinking of the delicious dishes of fish and roast meats and cakes, which he knew were in the oven. Under the table at his feet, he had laid the sack with the horse skin in it. For as we know, he was going to the town to sell it. The porridge did not taste good to him, so he trod upon his sack, and the dry skin in the sack squeaked loudly. "Hush," said little Klaus to his sack, at the same time treading on it again, so that it squeaked even louder than before. "Hello, what have you got in your sack?" asked the farmer. "Oh, it is a wizard," said little Klaus. "He says we should not eat porridge, for he has conjured the whole oven full of roast meats and fish and cakes." "Goodness me," said the farmer, and opening the oven, he saw all the delicious, tempting dishes his wife had hidden there, but which he now believed the wizard in the sack had conjured up for them. The wife could say nothing, but she put the food at once on the table, and they ate the fish, the roast meat, and the cakes. Little Klaus now trod again on his sack, so that the skin squeaked. "What does he say now?" asked the farmer. "He says," replied little Klaus, "that he has also conjured up for us 3 bottles of wine. They are standing in the corner by the oven." The wife had to fetch the wine which she had hidden, and the farmer drank and grew very merry. He would very much like to have had such a wizard as little Klaus had in the sack. "Can he conjure up the devil?" asked the farmer. "I should like to see him very much, for I feel just now in very good spirits." "Yes," said little Klaus. "My wizard can do everything that I ask." "Isn't that true?" he asked, treading on the sack so that it squeaked. "Do you hear? He says, yes, but that the devil looks so ugly that we should not like to see him." "Oh, I'm not at all afraid. What does he look like?" "He will show himself in the shape of a sexton. I say, said the farmer, he must be ugly. You must know that I can't bear to look at a sexton. But it doesn't matter. I know that it is the devil, and I shan't mind. I feel up to it now, but he must not come too near me. I must ask my wizard, said little Klaus, treading on the sack and putting his ear to it. What does he say? He says, you can open the chest in the corner there, and you will see the devil squatting inside it. But you must hold the lid, so that he shall not escape. Will you help me to hold him? Begged the farmer, going towards the chest where his wife had hidden the real sexton, who was sitting inside in a terrible fright. The farmer opened the lid a little way and saw him inside. Ugh! He shrieked, springing back. Yes, now I have seen him. He looked just like our sexton. Oh, it was horrid. So he had to drink again. And they drank till far on into the night. You must sell me the wizard, said the farmer. Ask anything you like. I will pay you down a bushelful of money on the spot. No, I really can't, said little Clans. Just think how many things I can get from this wizard. Ah, I should like to have him so much, said the farmer, begging very hard. Well, said little Klaus at last, as you have been so good as to give me shelter tonight, I will sell him. You shall have the wizard for a bushel of money, but I must have full measure. That you shall, said the farmer, but you must take the chest with you. I won't keep it another hour in the house. Who knows that he isn't in there still? Little Klaus gave the farmer his sack with the dry skin, and got instead a good bushelful of money. The farmer also gave him a wheelbarrow to carry away his money and the chest. Farewell, said little Klaus, and away he went with his money and the big chest, wherein sat the sexton. On the other side of the wood was a large, deep river. The water flowed so rapidly that you could scarcely swim against the stream. A great new bridge had been built over it, on the middle of which little Klaus stopped, and said aloud so that the sexton might hear, Now, what am I to do with this stupid chest? It is as heavy as if it were filled with stones. I shall only be tired, dragging it along. I will throw it into the river. If it swims home to me, well and good. And if it doesn't, it's no matter. Then he took the chest with one hand and lifted it up a little, as if he were going to throw it into the water. No, don't do that, called out the sexton in the chest. Let me get out first. Oh, said little Klaus, pretending that he was afraid. He is still in there. I must throw him quickly into the water to drown him. Oh, no, cried the sexton. I will give you a whole bushelful of money if you will let me go." "Ah, that's quite another thing," said little Klaus, opening the chest. The sexton crept out very quickly, pushed the empty chest into the water, and went to his house, where he gave little Klaus a bushel of money. One he had had already from the farmer, and now he had his wheelbarrow full of money. "Well, I have got a good price for the horse," said he to himself, when he shook all his money out in a heap in his room. "This will put Big Klaus in a rage when he hears how rich I have become through my one horse, but I won't tell him just yet." So he sent a boy to Big Klaus to borrow a bushel measure from him. "Now what can he want with it?" thought Big Klaus, and he smeared some tar at the bottom, so that of whatever was measured a little should remain in it. And this is just what happened, for when he got his measure back, 3 new silver 5-shilling pieces were sticking to it. "What does this mean?" said Big Klaus, and he ran off at once to little Klaus. "Where did you get so much money from?" "Oh, that was from my horse skin. I sold it yesterday evening." "That's certainly a good price," said Big Klaus, and running home in great haste, he took an axe, knocked all his 4 horses on the head, skinned them, and went into the town. "Skins! Skins! Who will buy skins?" he cried through the streets. All the shoemakers and tanners came running to ask him what he wanted for them. "A bushel of money for each," said Big Klaus. "Are you mad?" they all exclaimed. "Do you think we have money by the bushel? Skins! Skins! Who will buy skins?" he cried again. And to all who asked him what they cost, he answered, "A bushel of money." "He is making game of us," they said. And the shoemakers seized their yard measures, and the tanners their leathern aprons, and they gave Big Klaus a good beating. "Skins! Skins!" they cried mockingly. "Yes, we will tan your skin for you. Out of the town with him," they shouted. And Big Klaus had to hurry off as quickly as he could if he wanted to save his life. "Aha," said he when he came home. "Little Klaus shall pay dearly for this. I will kill him." Little Klaus's grandmother had just died. Though she had been very unkind to him, he was very much distressed, and he took the dead woman and laid her in his warm bed to try if he could not bring her back to life. There she lay the whole night, while he sat in the corner and slept on a chair, which he had often done before. And in the night, as he sat there, the door opened, and Big Klaus came in with his axe. He knew quite well where Little Klaus's bed stood, and going up to it, he struck the grandmother on the head, just where he thought Little Klaus would be. "There," said he. "Now you won't get the best of me again." And he went home. What a very wicked man, thought little Klaus. He was going to kill me. It was a good thing for my grandmother that she was dead already, or else he would have killed her. Then he dressed his grandmother in her Sunday clothes, borrowed a horse from his neighbor, harnessed the cart to it, sat his grandmother on the back seat so that she could not fall out when he drove, and away they went. When the sun rose, they were in front of a large inn. Little Klaus got down and went in to get something to drink. The host was very rich. He was a very worthy but hot-tempered man. "Good morning," said he to little Klaus. "You are early on the road." "Yes," said little Klaus. "I am going to the town with my grandmother. She is sitting outside in the cart. I cannot bring her in. Will you not give her a glass of mead? But you will have to speak loud, for she is very hard of hearing." "Oh yes, certainly I will," said the host, and pouring out a large glass of mead, he took it out to the dead grandmother, who was sitting upright in the cart. "Here is a glass of mead from your son," said the host. But the dead woman did not answer a word, and sat still. "Don't you hear?" cried the host as loud as he could. "Here is a glass of mead from your son." Then he shouted the same thing again, and yet again, but she never moved in her place. And at last he grew angry, threw the glass in her face so that she fell back into the cart, for she was not tied in her place. "Hello," cried little Klaus, running out of the door and seizing the host by the throat. "You have killed my grandmother. Look, there is a great hole in her forehead." "Oh, what a misfortune," cried the host, wringing his hands. "It all comes from my hot temper. Dear little Klaus, I will give you a bushel of money, and will bury your grandmother as if she were my own. Only don't tell about it, or I shall have my head cut off, and that would be very uncomfortable." So little Klaus got a bushel of money, and the host buried his grandmother as if she had been his own. Now, when little Klaus again reached home with so much money, he sent his boy to Big Klaus to borrow his bushel measure. "What's this?" said Big Klaus. "Didn't I kill him? I must see to this myself." So he went himself to little Klaus with the measure. "Well now, where did you get all this money?" asked he, opening his eyes at the heap. "You killed my grandmother, not me," said little Klaus. "I sold her and got a bushel of money for her." "That is indeed a good price," said Big Klaus. And hurrying home, he took an axe and killed his grandmother, laid her in the cart, and drove off to the apothecary's and asked whether he wanted to buy a dead body. "Who is it? And how did you get it?" asked the apothecary. "It is my grandmother," said Big Klaus. I killed her in order to get a bushel of money." "You are mad," said the apothecary. "Don't mention such things, or you will lose your head." And he began to tell him what a dreadful thing he had done, and what a wicked man he was, and that he ought to be punished, till Big Klaus was so frightened that he jumped into the cart and drove home as hard as he could. The apothecary and all the people thought he must be mad, so they let him go. "You shall pay for this," said Big Klaus as he drove home. "You shall pay for this dearly, little Klaus." So as soon as he got home, he took the largest sack he could find and went to little Klaus and said, "You have fooled me again. First, I killed my horses, then my grandmother. It is all your fault, but you shan't do it again." And he seized little Klaus, pushed him in the sack, threw it over his shoulder, crying out, "Now I am going to drown you." He had to go a long way before he came to the river, and little Klaus was not very light. The road passed by the church. The organ was sounding, and the people were singing most beautifully. Big Klaus put down the sack with little Klaus in it by the church door, and thought that he might as well go in and hear a psalm before going on farther. Little Klaus could not get out, and everybody was in church, so he went in. "Oh, dear, oh dear," groaned little Klaus in the sack, twisting and turning himself, but he could not undo the string. There came by an old shepherd with snow-white hair and a long staff in his hand. He was driving a herd of cows and oxen. These pushed against the sack so that it was overturned. "Alas," moaned little Clans, "I am so young, and yet I must die." "And I, poor man," said the cattle driver, "I am so old, and yet I cannot die." "Open the sack," called out little Klaus. "Creep in here instead of me, and you will die in a moment." "I will gladly do that," said the cattle driver, and he opened the sack, and little Klaus struggled out at once. "You will take care of the cattle, won't you?" asked the old man, creeping into the sack, which little Klaus fastened up, and then went on with the cows and oxen. Soon after, Big Klaus came out of the church, and taking up the sack on his shoulders, it seemed to him as if it had become lighter, for the old cattle driver was not half as heavy as little Klaus. "How easy he is to carry now. That must be because I heard part of the service." So he went to the river, which was deep and broad, threw in the sack with the old driver, and called after it, for he thought little Klaus was inside. "Down you go. You won't mock me any more now." Then he went home. But when he came to the crossroads, there he met little Klaus, who was driving his cattle. "What's this?" said Big Klaus. "Haven't I drowned you?" Yes, replied little Klaus. You threw me into the river a good half-hour ago. But how did you get those splendid cattle? Asked big Klaus. They are sea cattle, said little Klaus. I will tell you the whole story, and I thank you for having drowned me, because now I am on dry land and really rich. How frightened I was when I was in the sack. How the wind whistled in my ears as you threw me from the bridge into the cold water. I sank at once to the bottom. But I did not hurt myself, for underneath was growing the most beautiful soft grass. I fell on this, and immediately the sack opened. The loveliest maiden in snow-white garments, with a green garland round her wet hair, took me by the hand and said, "Are you little Klaus? Here are some cattle for you to begin with, and a mile farther down the road there is another herd, which I will give you as a present." Now I saw that the river was a great high road for the sea people. Along it they travel underneath, from the sea to the land till the river ends. It was so beautiful, full of flowers and fresh grass. The fishes which were swimming in the water shot past my ears, as the birds do here in the air. What lovely people there were, and what fine cattle were grazing in the ditches and dikes. "But why did you come up to us again?" asked big Klaus. "I should not have done so, if it is so beautiful down below." "Oh," said little Klaus, "that was just so politic of me. You heard what I told you, that the sea maiden said to me a mile farther along the road. And by the road she meant the river, for she can go by no other way. There was another herd of cattle waiting for me, but I know what windings the river makes. Now here, now there, so that it is a long way round. Therefore, it makes it much shorter if one comes on the land and drives across the field to the river. Thus I have spared myself quite half a mile, and have come much quicker to my sea cattle." "Oh, you're a lucky fellow," said big Klaus. "Do you think I should also get some cattle if I went to the bottom of the river?" "Oh, yes, I think so," said little Klaus. "But I can't carry you in a sack to the river. You are too heavy for me. If you like to go there yourself, and then creep into the sack, I will throw you in with the greatest of pleasure." "Thank you," said big Klaus. "But if I don't get any sea cattle when I come there, you will have a good hiding, mind." "Oh, no, don't be so hard on me." Then they went to the river. When the cattle, which were thirsty, caught sight of the water, they ran as quickly as they could to drink. "Look how they are running," said little Klaus. "They want to go to the bottom again." "Yes, but help me first," said big Klaus, "or else you shall have a beating." And so he crept into the large sack, which was lying on the back of one of the oxen. "Put a stone in, for I am afraid I may not reach the bottom," said big Klaus. "It goes all right," said little Klaus, but still he laid a big stone in the sack, fastened it up tight, and then pushed it in. Plump! There was big Klaus in the water, and he sank like lead to the bottom. "I doubt if he will find any cattle," said little Klaus as he drove his own home. Prince. Ring. Once upon a time, there was a king and his queen in their kingdom. They had one daughter who was called Ingeborg, and one son whose name was Ring. He was less fond of adventures than men of rank usually were in those days, and was not famous for strength or feats of arms. When he was 12 years old, one fine winter day, he rode into the forest along with his men to enjoy himself. They went on a long way until they caught sight of a hind with a gold ring on its horns. The prince was eager to catch it, if possible, so they gave chase and rode on without stopping until all the horses began to founder beneath them. At last, the prince's horse gave way too. And then there came over them a darkness so black that they could no longer see the hind. By this time they were far away from any house, and thought it was high time to be making their way home again. But they found they had got lost now. At first, they all kept together. But soon, each began to think that he knew the right way best. So they separated, and all went in different directions. The prince, too, had got lost like the rest, and wandered on for a time until he came to a little clearing in the forest not far from the sea, where he saw a woman sitting on a chair and a big barrel standing beside her. The prince went up to her and saluted her politely, and she received him very graciously. He looked down into the barrel then, and saw lying at the bottom an unusually beautiful gold ring, which pleased him so much that he could not take his eyes off it. The woman saw this, and said that he might have it if he would take the trouble to get it, for which the prince thanked her, and said it was at least worth trying. So he leaned over into the barrel, which did not seem very deep, and thought he would easily reach the ring. But the more he stretched down after it, the deeper grew the barrel. As he was thus bending down into it, the woman suddenly rose up and pushed him in head first, saying that now he could take up his quarters there. Then she fixed the top on the barrel and threw it out into the sea. The prince thought himself in a bad plight now, as he felt the barrel floating out from the land and tossing about on the waves. How many days he spent thus, he could not tell. But at last, he felt that the barrel was knocking against rocks, at which he was a little cheered, thinking it was probably land and not merely a reef in the sea. Being something of a swimmer, he at last made up his mind to kick the bottom out of the barrel, and having done so, he was able to get on shore, for the rocks by the sea were smooth and level, but overhead there were high cliffs. It seemed difficult to get up these, but he went along the foot of them for a little, till at last he tried to climb up, which at last he did. Having got to the top, he looked round about him and saw that he was on an island, which was covered with forest, with apples growing, and altogether pleasant as far as the land was concerned. After he had been there several days, he one day heard a great noise in the forest, which made him terribly afraid, so that he ran to hide himself among the trees. Then he saw a giant approaching, dragging a sledge loaded with wood, and making straight for him, so that he could see nothing for it but to lie down just where he was. When the giant came across him, he stood still and looked at the prince for a little. Then he took him up in his arms and carried him home to his house, and was exceedingly kind to him. He gave him to his wife, saying he had found this child in the wood, and she could have it to help her in the house. The old woman was greatly pleased, and began to fondle the prince with the utmost delight. He stayed there with them, and was very willing and obedient to them in everything, while they grew kinder to him every day. One day, the giant took him round and showed him all his rooms except the parlor. This made the prince curious to have a look into it, thinking there must be some very rare treasure there. So one day, when the giant had gone into the forest, he tried to get into the parlor, and managed to get the door open halfway. Then he saw that some living creature moved inside and ran along the floor towards him and said something, which made him so frightened that he sprang back from the door and shut it again. As soon as the fright began to pass off, he tried it again, for he thought it would be interesting to hear what it said. But things went just as before with him. He then got angry with himself, and summoning up all his courage, tried it a third time, and opened the door of the room, and stood firm. Then he saw that it was a big dog, which spoke to him, and said, "Choose me, Prince Ring." The prince went away, rather afraid, thinking with himself that it was no great treasure after all. But all the same, what it had said to him stuck in his mind. It is not said how long the prince stayed with the giant, but one day the latter came to him and said he would now take him over to the mainland out of the island, for he himself had no long time to live. He also thanked him for his good service, and told him to choose some one of his possessions, for he would get whatever he wanted. Ring thanked him heartily, and said there was no need to pay him for his services. They were so little worth. But if he did wish to give him anything, he would choose what was in the parlor. The giant was taken by surprise, and said, "There, you chose my old woman's right hand, but I must not break my word. No." Upon this, he went to get the dog, which came running with signs of great delight. But the prince was so much afraid of it that it was all he could do to keep from showing his alarm. After this, the giant accompanied him down to the sea, where he saw a stone boat, which was just big enough to hold the two of them and the dog. On reaching the mainland, the giant took a friendly farewell of Ring and told him he might take possession of all that was in the island after he and his wife died, which would happen within 2 weeks from that time. The prince thanked him for this and for all his other kindnesses, and the giant returned home, while Ring went up some distance from the sea. But he did not know what land he had come to, and was afraid to speak to the dog. After he had walked on in silence for a time, the dog spoke to him and said, "You don't seem to have much curiosity, seeing you never ask my name." The prince then forced himself to ask, "What is your name?" "You had best call me Snotty Snotty," said the dog. "Now we are coming to a king's seat, and you must ask the king to keep us all winter, and to give you a little room for both of us." The prince now began to be less afraid of the dog. They came to the king and asked him to keep them all the winter, to which he agreed. When the king's men saw the dog, they began to laugh at it and make as if they would tease it. But when the prince saw this, he advised them not to do it, or they might have the worst of it. They replied that they didn't care a bit what he thought. After Ring had been with the king for some days, the latter began to think there was a great deal in him, and esteemed him more than the others. The king, however, had a counselor called Red, who became very jealous when he saw how much the king esteemed Ring. And one day he talked to him and said he could not understand why he had so good an opinion of this stranger, who had not yet shown himself superior to other men in anything. The king replied that it was only a short time since he had come there. Red then asked him to send them both to cut down wood next morning and see which of them could do most work. Snotty Snotty heard this and told it to Ring, advising him to ask the king for 2 axes, so that he might have one in reserve if the first one got broken. Next morning, the king asked Ring and Red to go and cut down trees for him, and both agreed. Ring got the 2 axes, and each went his own way. But when the prince had got out into the wood, Snotty took one of the axes and began to hew along with him. In the evening, the king came to look over their day's work, as Red had proposed, and found that Ring's wood heap was more than twice as big. "I suspected," said the king, "that Ring was not quite useless. Never have I seen such a day's work." Ring was now in far greater esteem with the king than before, and Red was all the more discontented. One day he came to the king and said, "If Ring is such a mighty man, I think you might ask him to kill the wild oxen in the wood here, and flay them the same day, and bring you the horns and the hides in the evening. "Don't you think that a desperate errand?" said the king, "seeing they are so dangerous, and no one has ever yet ventured to go against them?" Red answered that he had only one life to lose, and it would be interesting to see how brave he was. Besides, the king would have good reason to ennoble him if he overcame them. The king at last allowed himself, though rather unwillingly, to be won over by Red's persistency, and one day asked Ring to go and kill the oxen that were in the wood for him, and bring their horns and hides to him in the evening. Not knowing how dangerous the oxen were, Ring was quite ready, and went off at once, to the great delight of Red, who was now sure of his death. As soon as Ring came in sight of the oxen, they came bellowing to meet him. One of them was tremendously big, the other rather less. Ring grew terribly afraid. "How do you like them?" asked Snotty. "Not well at all," said the prince. "We can do nothing else," said Snotty, "than attack them, if it is to go well. You will go against the little one, and I shall take the other." With this, Snotty leapt at the big one, and was not long in bringing him down. Meanwhile, the prince went against the other with fear and trembling. And by the time Snotty came to help him, the ox had nearly got him under. But Snotty was not slow in helping his master to kill it. Each of them then began to flay their own ox. But Ring was only half through by the time Snotty had finished his. In the evening, after they had finished this task, the prince thought himself unfit to carry all the horns and both the hides, so Snotty told him to lay them all on his back until they got to the palace gate. The prince agreed, and laid everything on the dog except the skin of the smaller ox, which he staggered along with himself. At the palace gate, he left everything lying, went before the king, and asked him to come that length with him, and there handed over to him the hides and horns of the oxen. The king was greatly surprised at his valor, and said he knew no one like him, and thanked him heartily for what he had done. After this, the king set Ring next to himself, and all esteemed him highly, and held him to be a great hero. Nor could Red any longer say anything against him, though he grew still more determined to destroy him. One day, a good idea came into his head. He came to the king and said he had something to say to him. "What is that?" said the king. Red said that he had just remembered the gold cloak, gold chessboard, and bright gold piece that the king had lost about a year before. "Don't remind me of them," said the king. Red, however, went on to say that since Ring was such a mighty man that he could do everything, it had occurred to him to advise the king to ask him to search for these treasures and come back with them before Christmas. In return, the king should promise him his daughter. The king replied that he thought it altogether unbecoming to propose such a thing to Ring, seeing that he could not tell him where the things were. But Red pretended not to hear the king's excuses, and went on talking about it until the king gave in to him. One day, a month or so before Christmas, the king spoke to Ring, saying that he wished to ask a great favor of him. "What is that?" said Ring. "It is this," said the king, "that you find for me my gold cloak, my gold chessboard, and my bright gold piece that were stolen from me about a year ago. If you can bring them to me before Christmas, I will give you my daughter in marriage." "Where am I to look for them then?" said Ring. "That you must find out for yourself," said the king. "I don't know." Ring now left the king and was very silent, for he saw he was in a great difficulty. But on the other hand, he thought it was excellent to have such a chance of winning the king's daughter. Snotty noticed that his master was at a loss and said to him that he should not disregard what the king had asked him to do, but he would have to act upon his advice. Otherwise, he would get into great difficulties. The prince assented to this and began to prepare for the journey. After he had taken leave of the king and was setting out on the search, Snotty said to him, "Now, you must first of all go about the neighborhood and gather as much salt as ever you can." The prince did so, and gathered so much salt that he could hardly carry it. But Snotty said, "Throw it on my back," which he accordingly did. And the dog then ran on before the prince until they came to the foot of a steep cliff. "We must go up here," said Snotty. "I don't think that will be child's play," said the prince. "Hold fast by my tail," said Snotty. And in this way he pulled Ring up on the lowest shelf of the rock. The prince began to get giddy, but up went Snotty on to the second shelf. Ring was nearly swooning by this time, but Snotty made a third effort and reached the top of the cliff, where the prince fell down in a faint. After a little, however, he recovered again, and they went a short distance along a level plain until they came to a cave. This was on Christmas Eve. They went up above the cave and found a window in it, through which they looked, and saw 4 trolls lying asleep beside the fire, over which a large porridge pot was hanging. "Now you must empty all the salt into the porridge pot," said Snotty. Ring did so, and soon the trolls wakened up. The old hag, who was the most frightful of them all, went first to taste the porridge. "How comes this?" she said. "The porridge is salt. I got the milk by witchcraft yesterday out of 4 kingdoms, and now it is salt." All the others then came to taste the porridge and thought it nice, but after they had finished it, the old hag grew so thirsty that she could stand it no longer, and asked her daughter to go out and bring her some water from the river that ran nearby. "I won't go," said she, "unless you lend me your bright gold piece." "Though I should die, you shan't have that," said the hag. "Die, then," said the girl. "Well then, take it, you brat," said the old hag, "and be off with you, and make haste with the water." The girl took the gold and ran out with it, and it was so bright that it shone all over the plain. As soon as she came to the river, she lay down to take a drink of the water. But meanwhile, the two of them had got down off the roof and thrust her, head first, into the river. The old hag began now to long for the water, and said that the girl would be running about with the gold piece all over the plain. So she asked her son to go and get her a drop of water. "I won't go," said he, "unless I get the gold cloak." "Though I should die, you shan't have that," said the hag. "Die then," said the son. "Well then, take it," said the old hag, "and be off with you. But you must make haste with the water." He put on the cloak, and when he came outside, it shone so bright that he could see to go with it. On reaching the river, he went to take a drink like his sister. But at that moment, Ring and Snotty sprang upon him, took the cloak from him, and threw him into the river. The old hag could stand the thirst no longer, and asked her husband to go for a drink for her. The brats, she said, were of course running about and playing themselves, just as she had expected they would. Little wretches that they were. "I won't go," said the old troll, "unless you lend me the gold chessboard." "Though I should die, you shan't have that," said the hag. "I think you may just as well do that," said he, "since you won't grant me such a little favor." "Take it, then, you utter disgrace," said the old hag, "since you are just like these two brats." The old troll now went out with the gold chessboard and down to the river, and was about to take a drink, when Ring and Snotty came upon him, took the chessboard from him, and threw him into the river. Before they had got back again, however, and up on top of the cave, they saw the poor old fellow's ghost come marching up from the river. Snotty immediately sprang upon him, and Ring assisted in the attack, and after a hard struggle, they mastered him a second time. When they got back again to the window, they saw that the old hag was moving towards the door. "Now, we must go in at once," said Snotty, "and try to master her there, for if she once gets out, we shall have no chance with her. She is the worst witch that ever lived, and no iron can cut her. One of us must pour boiling porridge out of the pot on her, and the other punch her with red-hot iron." In they went then, and no sooner did the hag see them than she said, "So you have come, Prince Ring. You must have seen to my husband and children." Snotty saw that she was about to attack them, and sprang at her with a red-hot iron from the fire, while Ring kept pouring boiling porridge on her without stopping. And in this way, they at last got her killed. Then they burned the old troll and her to ashes, and explored the cave, where they found plenty of gold and treasures. The most valuable of these they carried with them as far as the cliff, and left them there. Then they hastened home to the king with his 3 treasures, where they arrived late on Christmas night, and Ring handed them over to him. The king was beside himself with joy, and was astonished at how clever a man Ring was in all kinds of feats, so that he esteemed him still more highly than before, and betrothed his daughter to him. And the feast for this was to last all through Christmastide. Ring thanked the king courteously for this and all his other kindnesses, and as soon as he had finished eating and drinking in the hall, went off to sleep in his own room. Snotty, however, asked permission to sleep in the prince's bed for that night, while the prince should sleep where the dog usually lay. Ring said he was welcome to do so, and that he deserved more from him than that came to. So Snotty went up into the prince's bed, but after a time he came back, and told Ring he could go there himself now, but to take care not to meddle with anything that was in the bed. Now the story comes back to Red, who came into the hall and showed the king his right arm, wanting the hand, and said that now he could see what kind of a man his intended son-in-law was, for he had done this to him without any cause whatever. The king became very angry, and said he would soon find out the truth about it, and if Ring had cut off his hand without good cause, he should be hanged. But if it was otherwise, then Red should die. So the king sent for Ring and asked him for what reason he had done this. Snotty, however, had just told Ring what had happened during the night, and in reply he asked the king to go with him, and he would show him something. The king went with him to his sleeping room, and saw lying on the bed a man's hand holding a sword. "This hand," said Ring, "came over the partition during the night, and was about to run me through in my bed if I had not defended myself." The king answered that in that case he could not blame him for protecting his own life, and that Red was well worthy of death. So Red was hanged, and Ring married the king's daughter. The first night that they went to bed together, Snotty asked Ring to allow him to lie at their feet, and this Ring allowed him to do. During the night, he heard a howling and outcry beside them, struck a light in a hurry, and saw an ugly dog's skin lying near him, and a beautiful prince in the bed. Ring instantly took the skin and burned it, and then shook the prince, who was lying unconscious, until he woke up. The bridegroom then asked his name. He replied that he was called Ring, and was a king's son. In his youth, he had lost his mother, and in her place, his father had married a witch, who had laid a spell on him that he should turn into a dog, and never be released from the spell unless a prince of the same name as himself allowed him to sleep at his feet the first night after his marriage. He added further, "As soon as she knew that you were my namesake, she tried to get you destroyed so that you might not free me from the spell. She was the hind that you and your companions chased. She was the woman that you found in the clearing with the barrel, and the old hag that we just now killed in the cave." After the feasting was over, the two namesakes, along with other men, went to the cliff and brought all the treasure home to the palace. Then they went to the island and removed all that was valuable from it. Ring gave to his namesake, whom he had freed from the spell, his sister Ingiborg, and his father's kingdom to look after. But he himself stayed with his father-in-law, the king, and had half the kingdom while he lived, and the whole of it after his death. The Swineherd. There was once a poor prince. He possessed a kingdom which, though small, was yet large enough for him to marry on, and married he wished to be. Now, it was certainly a little audacious of him to venture to say to the emperor's daughter, "Will you marry me?" But he did venture to say so, for his name was known far and wide. There were hundreds of princesses who would gladly have said yes, but would she say the same? Well, we shall see. On the grave of the prince's father grew a rose tree, a very beautiful rose tree. It only bloomed every 5 years, and then bore but a single rose. But oh, such a rose! Its scent was so sweet that when you smelt it, you forgot all your cares and troubles. And he had also a nightingale, which could sing as if all the beautiful melodies in the world were shut up in its little throat. This rose and this nightingale the princess was to have, and so they were both put into silver caskets and sent to her. The emperor had them brought to him in the great hall, where the princess was playing "Here Comes a Duke a-Riding" with her ladies-in-waiting, and when she caught sight of the big caskets which contained the presents, she clapped her hands for joy. "If only it were a little pussy cat," she said. But the rose tree with the beautiful rose came out. "But how prettily it is made," said all the ladies-in-waiting. "It is more than pretty," said the emperor. "It is charming." But the princess felt it, and then she almost began to cry. "Ugh, Papa," she said. "It is not artificial. It is real." "Ugh," said all the ladies-in-waiting. "It is real. Let us see first what is in the other casket before we begin to be angry, thought the emperor. And there came out the nightingale. It sang so beautifully that one could scarcely utter a cross word against it. Superb, charmant, said the ladies in waiting, for they all chattered French, each one worse than the other. How much the bird reminds me of the musical snuff-box of the late empress, said an old courtier. Ah, yes, it is the same tone, the same execution. Yes, said the emperor, and then he wept like a little child. I hope that this, at least, is not real, asked the princess. Yes, it is a real bird, said those who had brought it. Then let the bird fly away, said the princess, and she would not on any account allow the prince to come. But he was nothing daunted. He painted his face brown and black, drew his cap well over his face, and knocked at the door. Good day, Emperor, he said. Can I get a place here as servant in the castle? Yes, said the emperor, but there are so many who ask for a place that I don't know whether there will be one for you. But still, I will think of you. Stay, it has just occurred to me that I want someone to look after the swine, for I have so very many of them. And the prince got the situation of imperial swineherd. He had a wretched little room close to the pigsties. Here he had to stay, but the whole day he sat working. And when evening was come, he had made a pretty little pot. All round it were little bells, and when the pot boiled, they jingled most beautifully and played the old tune. Where is Augustus, dear? Alas, he's not here, here, here. But the most wonderful thing was that when one held one's finger in the steam of the pot, then at once one could smell what dinner was ready in any fireplace in the town. That was indeed something quite different from the rose. Now the princess came walking past with all her ladies in waiting. And when she heard the tune, she stood still, and her face beamed with joy, for she also could play Where is Augustus, dear? It was the only tune she knew, but that she could play with one finger. Why, that is what I play, she said. He must be a most accomplished swineherd. Listen, go down and ask him what the instrument costs. And one of the ladies in waiting had to go down, but she put on wooden clogs. What will you take for the pot? Asked the lady in waiting. I will have 10 kisses from the princess, answered the swineherd. Heaven forbid, said the lady in waiting. Yes, I will sell it for nothing less, replied the swineherd. Well, what does he say? Asked the princess. I really hardly like to tell you, answered the lady in waiting. Oh, then you can whisper it to me. "He is disobliging," said the princess, and went away. But she had only gone a few steps when the bells rang out so prettily. "Where is Augustus, dear? Alas, he's not here, here, here." "Listen," said the princess. "Ask him whether he will take 10 kisses from my ladies in waiting." "No, thank you," said the swineherd. 10 kisses from the princess, or else I keep my pot." "That is very tiresome," said the princess. "But you must put yourselves in front of me, so that no one can see." And the ladies in waiting placed themselves in front, and then spread out their dresses. So the swineherd got his 10 kisses, and she got the pot. What happiness that was! The whole night and the whole day the pot was made to boil. There was not a fireplace in the whole town where they did not know what was being cooked, whether it was at the chancellor's or at the shoemaker's. The ladies in waiting danced and clapped their hands. "We know who is going to have soup and pancakes. We know who is going to have porridge and sausages. Isn't it interesting?" "Yes, very interesting," said the first lady in waiting. "But don't say anything about it, for I am the emperor's daughter." "Oh, no, of course we won't," said everyone. The swineherd, that is to say, the prince, though they did not know he was anything but a true swineherd, let no day pass without making something. And one day he made a rattle which, when it was turned round, played all the waltzes, galops, and polkas which had ever been known since the world began. "But that is superb," said the princess as she passed by. "I have never heard a more beautiful composition. Listen, go down and ask him what this instrument costs, but I won't kiss him again. He wants 100 kisses from the princess," said the lady in waiting, who had gone down to ask him. "I believe he is mad," said the princess. And then she went on, but she had only gone a few steps when she stopped. "One ought to encourage art," she said. "I am the emperor's daughter. Tell him he shall have, as before, 10 kisses. The rest he can take from my ladies in waiting." "But we don't at all like being kissed by him," said the ladies in waiting. "That's nonsense," said the princess. "And if I can kiss him, you can too. Besides, remember that I give you board and lodging." So the ladies in waiting had to go down to him again. 100 kisses from the princess," said he, "or each keeps his own." "Put yourselves in front of us," she said then. And so all the ladies in waiting put themselves in front, and he began to kiss the princess. "What can that commotion be by the pigsties?" asked the emperor, who was standing on the balcony. He rubbed his eyes and put on his spectacles. "Why, those are the ladies in waiting playing their games. I must go down to them." So he took off his shoes, which were shoes though he had trodden them down into slippers. What a hurry he was in, to be sure. As soon as he came into the yard, he walked very softly, and the ladies in waiting were so busy counting the kisses and seeing fair play that they never noticed the emperor. He stood on tiptoe. "What is that?" he said when he saw the kissing. And then he threw one of his slippers at their heads just as the swineherd was taking his 86th kiss. "Be off with you," said the emperor, for he was very angry. And the princess and the swineherd were driven out of the empire. Then she stood still and wept. The swineherd was scolding, and the rain was streaming down. "Alas, what an unhappy creature I am," sobbed the princess. "If only I had taken the beautiful prince. Alas, how unfortunate I am." And the swineherd went behind a tree, washed the black and brown off his face, threw away his old clothes, and then stepped forward in his splendid dress, looking so beautiful that the princess was obliged to courtesy. "I now come to this. I despise you," he said. "You would have nothing to do with a noble prince. You did not understand the rose or the nightingale, but you could kiss the swineherd for the sake of a toy. This is what you get for it." And he went into his kingdom and shut the door in her face, and she had to stay outside singing, "Where's my Augustus dear? Alas, he's not here, here, here." How to tell a true princess. There was once upon a time a prince who wanted to marry a princess, but she must be a true princess. So he traveled through the whole world to find one. But there was always something against each. There were plenty of princesses, but he could not find out if they were true princesses. In every case, there was some little defect, which showed the genuine article was not yet found. So he came home again in very low spirits, for he had wanted very much to have a true princess. One night, there was a dreadful storm. It thundered and lightened, and the rain streamed down in torrents. It was fearful. There was a knocking heard at the palace gate, and the old king went to open it. There stood a princess outside the gate. But oh, in what a sad plight she was from the rain and the storm. The water was running down from her hair and her dress into the points of her shoes and out at the heels again. And yet she said she was a true princess. Well, we shall soon find that, thought the old queen. But she said nothing, and went into the sleeping room, took off all the bedclothes, and laid a pea on the bottom of the bed. Then she put 20 mattresses on top of the pea, and 20 eider-down quilts on the top of the mattresses. And this was the bed in which the princess was to sleep. The next morning, she was asked how she had slept. "Oh, very badly," said the princess. "I scarcely closed my eyes all night. I am sure I don't know what was in the bed. I laid on something so hard that my whole body is black and blue. It is dreadful." Now they perceived that she was a true princess, because she had felt the pea through the 20 mattresses and the 20 eider-down quilts. No one but a true princess could be so sensitive. So the prince married her, for now he knew that at last he had got hold of a true princess. And the pea was put into the royal museum, where it is still to be seen if no one has stolen it. Now this is a true story. The Blue Mountains. There were once a Scotsman and an Englishman and an Irishman serving in the army together, who took it into their heads to run away on the first opportunity they could get. The chance came, and they took it. They went on traveling for 2 days through a great forest, without food or drink, and without coming across a single house. And every night they had to climb up into the trees through fear of the wild beasts that were in the wood. On the second morning, the Scotsman saw from the top of his tree a great castle far away. He said to himself that he would certainly die if he stayed in the forest, without anything to eat but the roots of grass, which would not keep him alive very long. As soon, then, as he got down out of the tree, he set off towards the castle, without so much as telling his companions that he had seen it at all. Perhaps the hunger and want they had suffered had changed their nature so much that the one did not care what became of the other if he could save himself. He traveled on most of the day, so that it was quite late when he reached the castle, and to his great disappointment found nothing but closed doors and no smoke rising from the chimneys. He thought there was nothing for it but to die after all, and had lain down beside the wall, when he heard a window being opened high above him. At this, he looked up and saw the most beautiful woman he had ever set eyes on. "Oh, it is fortune that has sent you to me," he said. "It is indeed," said she. "What are you in need of, or what has sent you here?" "Necessity," said he. "I am dying for want of food and drink." "Come inside, then," she said. "There is plenty of both here." Accordingly, he went in to where she was, and she opened a large room for him, where he saw a number of men lying asleep. She then set food before him, and after that showed him to the room where the others were. He lay down on one of the beds and fell sound asleep. And now we must go back to the two that he left behind him in the wood. When nightfall and the time of the wild beasts came upon these, the Englishman happened to climb up into the very same tree on which the Scotsman was, when he got a sight of the castle. And as soon as the day began to dawn, and the Englishman looked to the 4 quarters of heaven, what did he see but the castle too? Off he went, without saying a word to the Irishman. And everything happened to him just as it had done to the Scotsman. The poor Irishman was now left all alone, and did not know where the others had gone to, so he just stayed where he was, very sad and miserable. When night came, he climbed up into the same tree as the Englishman had been on the night before. As soon as day came, he also saw the castle and set out towards it. But when he reached it, he could see no signs of fire or living being about it. Before long, however, he heard the window opened above his head, looked up, and beheld the most beautiful woman he had ever seen. He asked if she would give him food and drink, and she answered kindly and heartily that she would, if he would only come inside. This he did very willingly, and she set before him food and drink that he had never seen the like of before. In the room there was a bed, with diamond rings hanging at every loop of the curtains. And everything that was in the room, besides, astonished him so much that he actually forgot that he was hungry. When she saw that he was not eating at all, she asked him what he wanted yet, to which he replied that he would neither eat nor drink until he knew who she was, or where she came from, or who had put her there. "I shall tell you that," said she. "I am an enchanted princess, and my father has promised that the man who releases me from the spell shall have the 1/3 of his kingdom while he is alive, and the whole of it after he is dead, and marry me as well. If ever I saw a man who looked likely to do this, you are the one. I have been here for 16 years now, and no one who ever came to the castle has asked me who I was, except yourself. Every other man that has come, so long as I have been here, lies asleep in the big room down there." "Tell me then," said the Irishman, "what is the spell that has been laid on you, and how you can be freed from it?" "There is a little room there," said the princess, "and if I could get a man to stay in it from 10 o'clock till midnight for 3 nights on end, I should be freed from the spell." "I am the man for you, then," said he. "I will take on hand to do it." Thereupon she brought him a pipe and tobacco, and he went into the room. But before long, he heard a hammering and knocking on the outside of the door, and was told to open it. "I won't," he said. The next moment, the door came flying in, and those outside along with it. They knocked him down and kicked him, and knelt on his body till it came to midnight. But as soon as the cock crew, they all disappeared. The Irishman was little more than alive by this time. As soon as daylight appeared, the princess came and found him lying full length on the floor. Unable to speak a word, she took a bottle, rubbed him from head to foot with something from it, and thereupon he was as sound as ever. But after what he had got that night, he was very unwilling to try it a second time. The princess, however, entreated him to stay, saying that the next night would not be so bad, and in the end, he gave in and stayed. When it was getting near midnight, he heard them ordering him to open the door. And there were 3 of them, for everyone that there had been the previous evening. He did not make the slightest movement to go out to them or to open the door, but before long they broke it up and were in on top of him. They laid hold of him and kept throwing him between them up to the ceiling or jumping above him until the cock crew, when they all disappeared. When day came, the princess went to the room to see if he was still alive, and taking the bottle, put it to his nostrils, which soon brought him to himself. The first thing he said then was that he was a fool to go on getting himself killed for anyone he ever saw, and was determined to be off and stay there no longer. When the princess learned his intention, she entreated him to stay, reminding him that another night would free her from the spell. Besides, she said, if there is a single spark of life in you when the day comes, the stuff that is in this bottle will make you as sound as ever you were. With all this, the Irishman decided to stay. But that night, there were 3 at him for every one that was there the 2 nights before, and it looked very unlikely that he would be alive in the morning after all that he got. When morning dawned, and the princess came to see if he was still alive, she found him lying on the floor as if dead. She tried to see if there was breath in him, but could not quite make it out. Then she put her hand on his pulse and found a faint movement in it. Accordingly, she poured what was in the bottle on him, and before long he rose up on his feet and was as well as ever he was. So that business was finished, and the princess was freed from the spell. The princess then told the Irishman that she must go away for the present, but would return for him in a few days in a carriage drawn by 4 gray horses. He told her to be easy and not speak like that to him. I have paid dear for you for the last 3 nights, he said, if I have to part with you now. But in the twinkling of an eye, she had disappeared. He did not know what to do with himself when he saw that she was gone. But before she went, she had given him a little rod, with which he could, when he pleased, waken the men who had been sleeping there, some of them for 16 years. After being thus left alone, he went in and stretched himself on 3 chairs that were in the room. When what does he see coming in at the door but a little fair-haired lad? "Where did you come from, my lad?" said the Irishman. "I came to make ready your food for you," said he. "Who told you to do that?" said the Irishman. "My mistress," answered the lad, "the princess that was under the spell, and is now free." By this the Irishman knew that she had sent the lad to wait on him. The lad also told him that his mistress wished him to be ready next morning at 9 o'clock, when she would come for him with the carriage, as she had promised. He was greatly pleased at this, and next morning, when the time was drawing near, went out into the garden. But the little fair-haired lad took a big pin out of his pocket and stuck it into the back of the Irishman's coat without his noticing it, whereupon he fell sound asleep. Before long the princess came with the carriage and 4 horses, and asked the lad whether his master was awake. He said that he wasn't. "It is bad for him," said she. "When the night is not long enough for him to sleep, tell him that if he doesn't meet me at this time tomorrow, it is not likely that he will ever see me again all his life." As soon as she was gone, the lad took the pin out of his master's coat, who instantly awoke. The first word he said to the lad was, "Have you seen her?" "Yes," said he, "and she bade me tell you that if you don't meet her at 9 o'clock tomorrow, you will never see her again." He was very sorry when he heard this, and could not understand why the sleep should have fallen upon him just when she was coming. He decided, however, to go early to bed that night, in order to rise in time next morning. And so he did. When it was getting near 9 o'clock, he went out to the garden to wait till she came, and the fair-haired lad along with him. But as soon as the lad got the chance, he stuck the pin into his master's coat again, and he fell asleep as before. Precisely at 9 o'clock came the princess in the carriage with 4 horses, and asked the lad if his master had got up yet. But he said, no, he was asleep, just as he was the day before. "Dear, dear," said the princess, "I am sorry for him. Was the sleep he had last night not enough for him? Tell him that he will never see me here again. And here is a sword that you will give him in my name, and my blessing along with it." With this she went off, and as soon as she had gone, the lad took the pin out of his master's coat. He awoke instantly, and the first word he said was, "Have you seen her?" The lad said that he had, and there was the sword she had left for him. The Irishman was ready to kill the lad out of sheer vexation, but when he gave a glance over his shoulder, not a trace of the fair-haired lad was left. Being thus left all alone, he thought of going into the room where all the men were lying asleep, and there, among the rest, he found his 2 comrades who had deserted along with him. Then he remembered what the princess had told him, that he had only to touch them with the rod she had given him, and they would all awake. And the first he touched were his own comrades. They started to their feet at once, and he gave them as much silver and gold as they could carry when they went away. There was plenty to do before he got all the others wakened, for the 2 doors of the castle were crowded with them all the day long. The loss of the princess, however, kept rankling in his mind day and night, till finally he thought he would go about the world to see if he could find anyone to give him news of her. So he took the best horse in the stable and set out. 3 years he spent traveling through forests and wildernesses, but could find no one able to tell him anything of the princess. At last he fell into so great despair that he thought he would put an end to his own life, and for this purpose laid hold of the sword that she had given him by the hands of the fair-haired lad. But on drawing it from its sheath, he noticed that there was some writing on one side of the blade. He looked at this and read there, "You will find me in the Blue Mountains." This made him take heart again, and he gave up the idea of killing himself, thinking that he would go on in hope of meeting someone who could tell him where the Blue Mountains were. After he had gone a long way without thinking where he was going, he saw at last a light far away and made straight for it. On reaching it, he found it came from a little house, and as soon as the man inside heard the noise of the horse's feet, he came out to see who was there. Seeing a stranger on horseback, he asked what brought him there and where he was going. "I have lived here," said he, "for 300 years, and all that time I have not seen a single human being but yourself." "I have been going about for the last 3 years," said the Irishman, "to see if I could find anyone who can tell me where the Blue Mountains are." "Come in," said the old man, "and stay with me all night. I have a book which contains the history of the world, which I shall go through tonight. And if there is such a place as the Blue Mountains in it, we shall find it out." The Irishman stayed there all night, and as soon as morning came, rose to go. The old man said he had not gone to sleep all night for going through the book, but there was not a word about the Blue Mountains in it. "But I'll tell you what," he said, "if there is such a place on earth at all, I have a brother who lives 900 miles from here, and he is sure to know where they are, if anyone in this world does." The Irishman answered that he could never go these 900 miles, for his horse was giving in already. "That doesn't matter," said the old man. "I can do better than that. I have only to blow my whistle, and you will be at my brother's house before nightfall." So he blew the whistle, and the Irishman did not know where on earth he was until he found himself at the other old man's door, who also told him that it was 300 years since he had seen anyone, and asked him where he was going. "I am going to see if I can find anyone that can tell me where the Blue Mountains are," he said. "If you will stay with me tonight," said the old man, "I have a book of the history of the world, and I shall know where they are before daylight, if there is such a place in it at all." He stayed there all night, but there was not a word in the book about the Blue Mountains. Seeing that he was rather cast down, the old man told him that he had a brother 900 miles away, and that if information could be got about them from anyone, it would be from him. "And I will enable you," he said, "to reach the place where he lives before night." So he blew his whistle, and the Irishman landed at the brother's house before nightfall. When the old man saw him, he said he had not seen a single man for 300 years, and was very much surprised to see anyone come to him now. "Where are you going to?" he said. "I am going about asking for the Blue Mountains," said the Irishman. "The Blue Mountains?" said the old man. "Yes," said the Irishman. "I never heard the name before, but if they do exist, I shall find them out. I am master of all the birds in the world, and have only to blow my whistle, and every one will come to me. I shall then ask each of them to tell where it came from, and if there is any way of finding out the Blue Mountains, that is it." So he blew his whistle, and when he blew it, then all the birds of the world began to gather. The old man questioned each of them as to where they had come from, but there was not one of them that had come from the Blue Mountains. After he had run over them all, however, he missed a big eagle that was wanting, and wondered that it had not come. Soon afterwards, he saw something big coming towards him, darkening the sky. It kept coming nearer and growing bigger. And what was this, after all, but the eagle? When she arrived, the old man scolded her and asked what had kept her so long behind. "I couldn't help it," she said. "I had more than 20 times further to come than any bird that has come here today." "Where have you come from, then?" said the old man. "From the Blue Mountains," said she. "Indeed," said the old man. "And what are they doing there?" "They are making ready this very day," said the eagle, "for the marriage of the daughter of the king of the Blue Mountains. For 3 years now, she has refused to marry anyone whatsoever, until she should give up all hope of the coming of the man who released her from the spell. Now she can wait no longer. For 3 years is the time that she agreed with her father to remain without marrying." The Irishman knew that it was for himself she had been waiting so long, but he was unable to make any better of it, for he had no hope of reaching the Blue Mountains all his life. The old man noticed how sad he grew, and asked the eagle what she would take for carrying this man on her back to the Blue Mountains. "I must have 80 cattle killed," said she, "and cut up into quarters. And every time I look over my shoulder, he must throw one of them into my mouth." As soon as the Irishman and the old man heard her demand, they went out hunting. And before evening, they had killed 70 cattle. They made quarters of them, as the eagle told them, and then the old man asked her to lie down, till they would get it all heaped up on her back. First of all, though, they had to get a ladder of 14 steps to enable them to get on to the eagle's back, and there they piled up the meat as well as they could. Then the old man told the Irishman to mount, and to remember to throw a quarter of beef to her every time she looked round. He went up, and the old man gave the eagle the word to be off, which she instantly obeyed. And every time she turned her head, the Irishman threw a quarter of beef into her mouth. As they came near the borders of the kingdom of the Blue Mountains, however, the beef was done. And when the eagle looked over her shoulder, what was the Irishman at but throwing the stone between her tail and her neck? At this, she turned a complete somersault and threw the Irishman off into the sea, where he fell into the bay that was right in front of the king's palace. Fortunately, the points of his toes just touched the bottom, and he managed to get ashore. When he went up into the town, all the streets were gleaming with light, and the wedding of the princess was just about to begin. He went into the first house he came to, and this happened to be the house of the king's henwife. He asked the old woman what was causing all the noise and light in the town. "The princess," said she, "is going to be married tonight against her will, for she has been expecting every day that the man who freed her from the spell would come. There is a guinea for you," said he. "Go and bring her here." The old woman went, and soon returned along with the princess. She and the Irishman recognized each other and were married, and had a great wedding that lasted for a year and a day.